Tell me when we're
rolling.
We're rolling, all right. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's City of Tumwater Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. It's 7 o'clock past, and our meeting is called to order. I'll start with a roll call. Commissioner Daniel? Commissioner Edwards is excused. Commissioner Kirkpatrick?
Here.
Commissioner Kotek is excused. No. Here. Staff, Vice Chair Staff.
I'm here.
And me, Commissioner Roberts. Great, we have a quorum and a fair amount to cover, so let's keep moving. Do we have any changes to our agenda tonight? From anybody? Let's go to item 4, approval of minutes. We've got a couple. That's a minute. Anybody have any remarks, revisions, motions?
Move to approve the minutes of September 23rd and October 14th, 2025.
Oh, second.
Okay, it was moved by Commissioner Nelson and seconded by Commissioner Kirkpatrick, and third by Commissioner to approve our minutes from September 23rd and October 14th, 2025. All in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Thank you. Let's go to Commissioners' reports. Anybody, anything you'd like to bring up? All right. Let's go to Deputy Director.
Well, I'm brand new to the city, been here for a little less than a week. My name is Sharon Lumban Tobing. I'm really happy to be here. My team, which you know very well. That's all I have. I'm still orienting and climbing on board, but more
Sharon may not realize it, but she's actually been here more than a week.
Oh, maybe a day, a week and one day.
Well, welcome. All right. Any other remarks? Let's see. Let's go to general public comment. Is there anybody online? Nope. Or did you hear from anybody since our last meeting, either by mail or email or phone?
We received comments from the Olympia Master Builders, which I provided. We received review comments, part of the notice of intent and the CFOA review process from DNR Geological. Their comments were everything looks okay. We received 2 sets of comments from WashDOT. One was a request for a meeting to talk about their interchanges in our transportation plan, and we'll be doing that tomorrow. We don't have additional information on what their concerns are. We also received a comment letter from WashDOT Aviation, wanting us to take a closer look at our airport overlay. So we've included those comments in a packet we gave to our city attorney, and we also included that as a potential below the line thing to be considering as part of the program. Mm-hmm. We can talk about that further once we have no more from our city attorney.
Okay. That'd be good to know. Okay. Let's go on then to our public hearing portion of our meeting tonight, item 8. And what I'll do is I'll first describe what our public hearing process and so here's our procedure. When I'll open the meeting, I'll formally open the public hearing portion. Staff will give a staff report. Then there'll be a chance for the commissioners to ask questions of staff. And then if there's anybody present or online, I'll take any public testimony on our topic tonight. And then after that's done, I'll close the public hearing portion of our meeting. If there's anybody online, this will be especially important. that if there are speakers wishing to make public testimony tonight, I'm going to ask you to give your name and any affiliation and your address. And then if you have comments, to make those comments as briefly as you can and relevant to our topic tonight. And depending on if there's a lot of people, I don't know that there are any people, but I may impose some time limits. And if comments get repetitive, I'll ask that those be avoided. Of course, unruly behavior won't be tolerated. And I'll just mention that the topic of our public hearing tonight is an opportunity for us to hear again on ordinance number O-2025-009 for the 2025 comprehensive plan amendments under that ordinance, and then forward a recommendation. All right, that's basically the procedure we'll go through. So I hereby open the public hearing. Again, I'll just repeat our topic tonight is to hear about our formal public hearing on ordinance number O-2025-009, 2025 comprehensive. And I will then go to staff report. Is that you down?
That's me.
Great.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. Thank you for hosting a public hearing so we can take testimony. This ordinance is number O-2025-009. It's a comprehensive plan amendment, and it's going to update the 2026 to 2031 six-year capital facilities plan. The council approved the work plan in January 21st, 2025, so that we could do this work. And previous to that, the comprehensive plan amendment cycle was suspended through ordinance number O-2022-023, and ordinance numbers O-2025-004 extended the suspension. So that just lets you know, we hadn't done the work for those two through that period because of those suspensions, and we were focusing on the comprehensive plan update. So this comprehensive plan amendment is the six-year plan for capital facilities, and the general government and transportation projects were heard. There was a briefing, staff provided a briefing for the General Government Committee on September 18th, 2025, and Planning Commission yourselves were had a work session on September 23rd. So that was those two topics, general government projects and the transportation topics. And then for the water, sewer, and storm projects, the General Government Committee was briefed on October 9th, and Planning Commission held a work session on October 14th, 2025. So the notice of the public hearing was published on October 17th, and these amendments are comprehensive plan amendments. They're subject to our Tumwater Municipal Code, Chapter 18, Title 18, Chapter 60, and Subchapter 25, Section B, or Section 25, Subsection B. Therefore, they must conform with the Growth Management Act requirements, and they must be submitted for the Department of Commerce review. And we have to evaluate them with internal consistency, and they have to be consistent with the countywide planning policies, related jurisdictional plans, and with the growth, they must conform with the Growth Management Act as well. So because those things are in place, staff concludes that those things are in place, that they conform to the Growth Management Act, that they the Department of, they have been submitted for the Department of Commerce review. So the Department of Commerce review, it was submitted on September 11th, 2025, and there's a 60-day review window for that. So that has taken place. And then the staff have reviewed this for internal consistency with our own plans, and then with the jurisdictional plans and with countywide planning policies. So, yes.
A quick question.
Yeah.
So the review by the Department of Commerce is still ongoing?
Yeah, the date for that window is going to be November 10th, 2025.
Significant, we'll bring it back. We have not received any comments to date. Typically, that notification process goes to Commerce, who in turn sends it out. We haven't heard any,
Okay.
which is not uncommon.
I was just curious. Okay.
Yeah, and then the last piece for review is that the environmental checklist was completed for the State Environmental Policy Act. And so the checklist was prepared on September 11th, and determination of non-significance was issued on September 26th. And the review period, the comment period was over October 10th, and no comments were received. Yes.
Okay, at this point, we can go to commissioner questions or comments. Anybody have anything? Mr. Staff, do you have any?
Nothing for me, thank you.
Alrighty. Then what I will do is see if there are members of the public. There's nobody here in the room with us except for us, but other people. Is there anybody online? And we didn't hear from anybody.
We've received no comments in regard to this particular board.
All right then. Then I will say that our public hearing portion is closed. Any other comments, we can ask those, but we're looking for an action. Whether to recommend approval to city council or changes or what have you.
We recommend to City Council approval of ordinance number 2025-009, 2025, transit plan amendment.
There's a second. A second. All right. It's been moved and seconded by Commissioner Kirkpatrick and then Commissioner Nelson to recommend approval to the City Council for ordinance number 2025-009, our 2025 comprehensive. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Unopposed. Motion passes. All right. The ordinance approved. Or excuse me, rather, our recommendation for approval to the council is approved. Okay, let's go on to item 9. Ordinance number, this is just a discussion, right, a briefing of ordinance number 010.
Me again. Again, thank you for having us and presenting so that we can present a little bit more information about the ordinance that will carry forward the comprehensive plan amendments. And at this point in the work session, we really just want to highlight the staff conclusions and then make sure that you have no further questions, and then request that we set a public hearing for November 10th. So at the last meeting, we walked through the goals and saw how the goals aligned with our community's strategic plan and the strategic goals, and saw how those came together. I hope that made sense to you, and answered some of those questions about how this connects to what our community needs. The staff conclusions, it might sound a little similar, but because they're all related to the Tumwater Municipal Code 1860-02B, or 025B, then, you know, this is also a comprehensive plan amendment, and it has to meet the same criteria as they are applicable. So for this amendment, it meets the review and approval of our Tumwater Municipal Code 1860.18.60 I'm gonna have to remember it. Okay, thank you. .025B, and so that it is consistent with the Growth Management Act goals and Thurston countywide planning policies, that all elements are internally consistent and have been reviewed for that specifically, that it is consistent with neighboring jurisdictions, and then based upon that review, that it is consistent with the requirements of the Growth Management Act. So we did receive comments from Olympia Master Builders, and they were provided to you earlier today. That was sent to us this morning. And we reviewed them, and in most cases, the policies that they had mentioned may have been from a previous version, but our current version, in either the policy had either already met the goal, or in sometimes our implementation, what we provided in the development code had met the goal or exceeded the goal, or exceeded their request. So we reviewed it and noted that that was has been completed. Yeah. We're pretty certain yes, either met it or beyond. Yep. And so at this point, I'd like to just open it up to ask any further questions.
Term by right. Answers is their questioning letter. Is this something that appears in any Washington State code? Or is this a terminology that pushed by certain groups?
Our interpretation is it means permitted outright, meaning that there's not an additional step that somebody needs to go through to get approval to put the use. So for example, single-family house or low density would be permitted outright. Or our interpretation, we haven't gone into this, is whether that's by right. That might be a different way of saying it. That's our interpretation of the comment letter.
So the term itself, not in Washington State.
It's not one that we commonly use in zoning.
Oh. Make it sound something we should do, but there are other directions for them to go to get it done rather than.
Yeah, there has been discussions, and this is where it gets a little more complicated, about and this hasn't been approved yet by the state legislature, but it's been proposed, that if somebody submits an application for a particular use, and if the jurisdiction has a certain amount of time to review and approve it, do so within that time frame, becomes approved by right. So that has not happened yet, and that's something obviously that we're not in favor of. Each application is an individual thing, and we obviously try our best to get things reviewed in an appropriate manner, but not all applications are created the same or developments on particular parcels.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Well, so attachment A is part of.
Yeah.
So,
We have provided acknowledgement to Olympia Master Builders that your comments have been shared with the Planning Commission and that we'll be discussing them tonight. They responded by saying they appreciated us responding properly, and they've actually found our jurisdiction to be very responsive in considering their needs. So in our mind, that takes care of addressing the comment. We received the comments, we reviewed them, we presented them to the commission. If you have additional questions or other things, then we can act upon that. But based on the staff analysis, we're not proposing any changes to what we've already proposed.
oh, you're not proposing. I do have one question. I think I actually agreed with him, and I thought about it when we were going through it, whatever month we were going through it. And it was about, ensuring residential permit review timelines are predictable.
Yes.
And apparently they're feeling that they're not predictable.
No, there's two parts to that question. One is the state requirement of timelines that we have to follow as a jurisdiction to review a complete application. And that means, a complete application means that everything that we need to have a review has been presented by the applicant. There are cases when we don't have, we need a traffic study to evaluate that. That's not included, so it's not a complete application. There are times when we're in the review process where, as we're reviewing the details of, say, their stormwater plan, that there becomes an issue because we know there's high groundwater in a particular area and their stormwater study doesn't reflect that. We ask them to address that as part of their review procedure. So we have an obligation under state law, which is codified in Title 14, which the Planning Commission basically replaced a couple of years ago in response to state legislation changing our timelines. So, for example, simpler permits have a much shorter time frame for us to review by, and then more complicated ones, we have a little more time. But our responsibility is under state law to make sure that we meet those deadlines and that we have reporting on an annual basis of how we're doing against those timelines. And in cases where we can't meet those timelines, we've included language that says that we can refund up to half of somebody's permit fees because we didn't meet the timeline.
What do
So
you think you guys are doing on that?
based on the information, the report that was generated by our permit staff in March, we're doing well. Most of our permits are well within the time frame. There are a couple, for a variety of reasons, that have gone past that. But more importantly, we're still waiting for the 26th report, which is one that's going to be mostly under the permits received after the new Title 14 was in place, and so we'll have a much better, this is the rules we were operating under, they're the same rules, and going forward, this is how they match up. So that's how we track those things.
Did you have something that you think does need to?
I don't have any examples. It's just when I just read this, I don't have the depth of knowledge that Brad has. So I'm thinking, well,
Yeah. There are some self-evident things in there that sort of need a further explanation of what they actually entail.
And so these new ones, it's interesting, if you look back at the packet where policy H.7 is, it actually in that page goes from 1.5, 1.6 to 1.8. So there's a gap in that number.
We'll need to
So you want
fix
to
that.
catch that before it goes up. Some of these things I disagreed with, so. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to feel, and it never should be false, that when we receive input from an organization like OMB, that we can sometimes find a place where we can say, we heard you, and we're not totally in agreement with you, but here's what we are proposing back to you, and kind of do a little negotiation so that we look, and we are demonstrating that willingness to.
And I think, and I just want to bring up something you'll see as part of the work program discussion next month. As part of that, we have developed a separate housing action work program, and that includes things like continuing the housing stakeholders that we started as part of the comprehensive plan update, which included nonprofit builders, environmental groups, and the builders, and all these kinds of things, to sort of get that kind of conversation going and that kind of discussion going before you see an ordinance. So we are able to sort of work through some of these things and maybe come up with solutions that work for everybody, that we can turn around and say, here's what we have discussed. What do you think in terms of the planning commission and then the council?
Well, I think that's a really positive step forward in doing that. And we've heard from this organization more than once.
Right.
And, it's always been very respectful.
Yeah, I do want to emphasize the respectful part and the fact that, in my experience, they have been the most respectful of the various building organizations I've had to deal with over the past 25 years. So I think we need to take that into account when they provide comments and do so in a way that's not, you're doing it all wrong.
It always works better if we can, you know, construct.
Commissioner Staff, did you have any remarks or questions on this?
No, I appreciate the conversation but I have no remarks.
All right, so I think what we're looking for here is whether to set a public hearing date, ideally for meeting on Monday, November 10th. Motion?
So I make the motion of a public hearing on November 10th to address, and I gotta find the number. Well, whatever this is, 02025-110, I think it is.
10.
010,
010.
010.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, Commissioner Nelson has moved and Commissioner Kirkpatrick has seconded that we schedule a public hearing for ordinance number O-2025-010, our 2025 comprehensive plan periodic update, for November 10th, 2025, and I want to emphasize again, that's going to be on Monday. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor of setting the public hearing for November 10th?
Aye.
Good deal. None opposed. Schedule away. All right, so motion is approved. Motion is stopped. All right, let's go on to item number 10. This is the briefing on ordinance number 2025-011, our 2025 Development Code periodic update.
That's me.
All right.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Erica Smith Erickson, Housing and Land Use Planner for the City of Tumwater. Tonight, we talked about the Capital Facilities Plan and our Comprehensive Plan update. I'm going to be giving a briefing now on our 2025 Development Code update, which supplements the Comprehensive Plan update. Let's see. The intent of our discussion tonight is to discuss the state-required amendments to the Tumwater's Municipal Code. They are required to be completed by December 31st, 2025, along with the Comprehensive Plan update. Sorry, I'm trying to find a good position for that so we don't block the text here. So House Bill 5558 was passed, and what that did was it removed the option for staff in the city to adopt middle housing, accessory dwelling unit, and design review development code standards 6 months after the periodic update. What that means is we need to adopt these at the same time as our comprehensive plan update. Along with these topics, staff did make some other amendments to some of the building code, building permit application review and extensions, as well as some parking requirements. So some discussion questions I would like to propose to the commission. Do the amendments address the state requirements and reflect the needs of Tumwater? Are the amendments clear and understandable? And then something that I would like to ask of the commission that I don't have up on the screen is your opinion on the staff report and the formatting and how the code changes were summarized. Did anyone have a chance to read the staff report and look at how I formatted that? Yeah, I wanted to take your, the recommendation from previous meetings on how to make it relevant or how it might, pertain to the community. So what I really try to do is say why this is important for this update. So thank you. And moving forward, I would like to ask the commission how we would like to review the text amendments. The amendments in the ordinance itself was included in the staff packet, but because of the length of it, I wanted to know, previously we would go through all the text amendments and we would go through the screen, show every change to every section of code. What would work best for the commission?
To some extent, I really like this format where you tell us why it's important.
Yeah.
Some things, it seems to me, are gonna be minor. And I don't know, I mean, obviously, if we need to talk about them, we can. You know, I really kind of like focusing on things that might be big shifts
Mm-hmm.
that we're making and why, and, you know, consequences and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, maybe not so much on, might be more, you know, correcting text or.
The clarification code amendments, where we, okay.
I mean, if there, maybe in a more general way, it's like, okay, maybe there's a little clump of them, that this is what gets us all in alignment, okay, great, handled. But then the substance of things would be the more important ones to cover from my point.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll finish this discussion, and then afterwards, if there's any comments or maybe some feedback, I'm willing to take that at any time as well.
No, I agree with you. It's anything that's new, not kind of a minutia.
Okay. Thank you.
Easier for you, huh?
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll discuss the topics tonight and then we'll see. So moving forward, I wanted to show a diagram of how the city's role in development regulations and how it's all related to the comprehensive plan amendment. Tumwater zoning development regulations, permit procedures, and fees influence the location, intensity, and type of use that can be built. This is a diagram showing the Growth Management Act, which is our comprehensive plan update, our elements, and then we have the countywide planning policies, which we have to consider while doing our comprehensive plan update as well. And then we have the comprehensive plan itself, and then specific to these updates, we have the housing element and our development regulations, which would hopefully produce more housing. What are development regulations? Development regulations identify what, where, and how a proposal can take place or happen within the city. Sorry about the screen always skipping forward. But this includes permits required, how to create lots, what housing types are allowed, and building site requirements. And then our zoning map is based on the citywide future land use map. The zoning map establishes the location and boundaries of the zoning districts that allow specific uses and intensities. We went over this with the land use element where we updated our zoning regulations, and we combined the residential zonings. We renamed the residential zonings, so that's going to be related to the zoning map. The zone district is what zone district a proposed project is in will determine the kind of development regulations that will apply. So hopefully that makes sense. If anyone has questions, feel free to stop me at any time. Tonight's focus on specific housing-related amendments, we will be discussing middle housing, accessory dwelling units, co-housing, parking, religious organization housing, and design review requirements. We're gonna start discussing the middle housing. So under House Bill 1110, we were required to allow 2 units per lot, up to 4 units per lot in residential zone districts. To get that 4 units, at least one of those units needs to be affordable to those making 80% or less. Staff added a definition for dwelling unit allowance. This is different than dwelling unit density or density. So staff wanted to create a difference because the dwelling unit density and density requirements for a specific zoning designation were unclear. So we added a new term. And we need to meet the density requirements on 75% of lots in Tumwater that are primarily dedicated to the residential uses. Two primarily residential zone districts were excluded from the middle housing requirements. That was our manufactured home park zoning and then our residential sensitive resource areas. So what that means is the 2 to 4 dwelling units, dwelling unit allowance doesn't apply to those specific zoning designations, and we still met that 75% on the other zoning designations that we created for density. And then another update topic was meeting the 2 accessory dwelling units per lot. And this also counts towards House Bill 1337 for the dwelling unit allowance. Tumwater has chose to count accessory dwelling units towards the dwelling unit allowance. So what that means is the clause at the very top where we have to allow at least 2 units per lot. If someone wanted to propose an accessory dwelling unit, that would count towards their 2 units per lot.
There's still an upper limit of 4 units per lot. Yeah.
Yes, as long as one of those units is affordable.
5, even if one is affordable.
Yep, we're just doing the 2, yeah, 2 to 4.
More than 4.
Yeah.
So if you had one building, 2-story, 2 residential units, does that count as 1 or 2?
It's 2 dwelling units.
It
So,
does
for
count.
example, yeah, so
Together and-
single building, either divided down the middle vertically, and 2 townhomes or some equivalent, or duplex, 2 units, or 1 floor and another floor, a stack flat. Stacked units can go up to 3, but under the limitations without that being allowed.
Okay, making the changes that you made, are you slightly reduced? I mean, you're staying at the 75%, so you're not really.
The 75% is laid out in the state guidance to say, if your number of lots that are dedicated almost exclusively to residential uses meet the middle housing standards, which includes this 2 units per lot, as well as the range of middle housing uses, then anything over 75% does not have to allow for those things. And when we looked, and the key is, it's not area, it's number of lots. So we went and literally counted up all the lots in all of our residential zones. And I believe the percentage was higher than 85%, where we would allow middle housing, 2 per lot. The ones that were greater are residential sensitive resource zone district, which is primarily either very high groundwater, wetland affected, or Percival Creek, or our manufactured home parks, which were established to protect manufactured home parks from other uses. We were able to exclude those because the number of lots in those areas was, far less than the 25% we could have.
No, it's really complicated, but it just feels like a really hot topic. a lot of folks struggling to understand where we're going.
Yeah, one thing that we definitely been hearing, from residents of our current manufactured home parks is the concern that we would be allowing a range of uses that aren't currently allowed in those areas, and raise the possibility of displacement of those particular things. And so we've had conversations explaining just what we went through, that we were able to exclude those for these reasons.
Totally agree with that.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick?
If you go into online, we have asked for, you may have enough geographic area and ADU, or even 2 ADUs, but if your lot is taken up by a septic system, you can't physically build those. Which category did you put in?
So there are restrictions to the use of land that sort of filter out a lot of this stuff to begin with, and number one is critical areas. So say, for example, you have a lot that is almost entirely covered by critical areas, that you don't have enough space for another unit because you wouldn't be able to meet that with the critical area ordinance. We have a similar situation when we're dealing with areas that are using well water. So there's a circumference around the well that has to be protected. You can't put things within that. Same kind of thing also with those areas that don't have readily available sewer. They're just outside of our range of our sewer system it is right now, that they can develop on septic, but there are restrictions already within the zoning code about how big those lots have to be and all that kind of stuff. So those are kinds of the filters that come in before you even get to, can I add another unit?
There is a 15 or 16% of the 80-something.
Yeah.
And something I wanted to say too is we allow for it, but they also have to meet other design and development standards within that zoning district. So there's going to be lot coverage, setbacks, and if you can't fit more than one dwelling on your lot, this doesn't necessarily mean that you could still add another unit. You have to meet the other applicable standards, and septic is one of those standards. It affects the density and the lot size, like Brad was saying. So we do allow for it, but they have to meet other standards.
So I'd like to kind of follow up and make sure I'm kind of understanding. So after things like critical areas or septic drain fields and things like that, wells, are there other things where lot size matters?
Yeah, so the hierarchy, we start with critical areas.
Yes.
And exclude those things. And then we look at health, things related to health, water, and sanitary sewer on-site kind of things. And then we have a category that deals with local dimensional regulations within our zoning code. And that's things like setbacks and lot coverage and those kinds of things. So all of those things taken together sort of give you that square or that portion of the lot that's developable. And then it's really, can you meet those requirements within that space? Or can you do what you need to do?
Okay, so it's fairly tailored to whatever the lot or the property.
Yeah, it will be an evaluation on by the individual lot. And
So,
It's not like you're gonna come up with like a lot size.
no, and that's where the size and arrangement of the individual lots are so
Yeah.
important.
Okay.
We can establish these rules and so forth, but each development has to be evaluated to see how it works. We don't have, there's not a cookie cutter thing that we can say, yeah, you're good.
Yes. Was our person,
They were looking for the city hall.
other questions before we move on?
all right, 2 more topics under House Bill 1110. We updated our code to allow 6 out of the 9 types of middle housing in residential zones. We talked about this with the housing element and allowing, that was a state requirement, 6 out of the 9. Staff have incorporated that now into our code, and we allow that in our residential zoning. So that includes the duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, stacked flats, townhouses, and cottage housing. Something else, we have zero lot line short plats. Zero lot line short plats and binding site plan review processes, we actually already allow, and they're under Title 17 of our Tumwater Municipal Code. As basically a condo. So when you have no space in between the lot lines and it's two units sharing one wall, that would be considered a zero lot line.
Clarification, so zero lot line is if you have two lots. Flex could be on a single lot. You could divide it and create two separate lots under condo rules, but you wouldn't have to. But the zero lot line is really to allow for those cases where you want to have
Separate ownership?
that are formally subdivided.
Well, and so now with the other change where you can sell off your accessory dwelling unit, might need,
Potentially, say for you have an attached ADU, that might be a case where
Right.
that comes in. It's really when I think it's used primarily during the subdivision process, when we get a formal plat in, and then we say, you know, this, we expect to see this occur, and instead of having a setback between the buildings, they'd be up against each other, and that's just planned for.
does that kind of thing generally come in as like, I'm trying to envision how somebody comes in with a request for a permit. For like, you know, just like a single little lot, or is it, are we talking like a larger scale development?
We've seen both. Larger scale developments are now coming in for townhouse development, which is, you know, on both sides connected.
Yeah.
And we're actually seeing more of those come in now, and those are, it could be 20 or 30 units as part of that. But we're also starting to see a little bit of infill along those
Okay.
lines as well.
Also, we need to limit design review for middle housing standards to apply this. We need to ensure that middle housing standards for design review are not more stringent than the single-family residential. We revised our single-family chapter of the citywide design guidelines to include middle housing. And then also we needed to address parking requirements. And we'll go in depth on these topics a little bit more later in the presentation. All right, so now we're going to discuss accessory dwelling units. So House Bill 1337 is different than House Bill 1110. We talked briefly about accessory dwelling units counting towards dwelling unit allowance. But with this House Bill, we now have changed our code to allow 2 accessory dwelling units per lot. The current code limits a residential property to 1 dwelling unit per lot with a single-family structure. And now, if development standards are met, we can allow 2 accessory dwelling units. Also, part of this House Bill is we revised the maximum, or the current code limits accessory dwelling units to 800 square feet maximum, and now we are saying they can have up to 1,000 square feet. So we increased the size. Also, part of this, we are in a interlocal agreement for pre-approved accessory dwelling unit plans, and they are revised to be 1,000 square feet. So.
Go ahead.
This says accessory dwelling unit not less than 1,000. Those 1,800.
It means we can't regulate them.
We can't require that there be smaller than, it can be smaller than 1,000, but we can't say they have to.
We still have all of those kind of categories.
I read this the way it's there. It cannot be less.
Right. Maybe there's some clearer language.
Yeah, we will be.
on that.
The important thing is the state requirements. But what you should say is, we can't restrict accessory dwelling units to be
Yeah.
less than 1,000.
This is an abbreviated this is abbreviated language from the actual bill. The bill does have it written in a way that is a little wonky, but essentially what it's saying is we can't tell someone their accessory dwelling unit has to be less than 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
They just,
We can prohibit them over 1,000.
yes, correct.
We can,
Correct.
We can't prohibit them under 1,000.
Essentially, we're raising our maximum size to 1,000 square feet.
So there's no minimum?
well, the minimum is whatever the building code, a little space, which
Yeah.
is very small.
Yeah.
We went through that discussion about
Right.
a year ago and decided that you could walk in it.
Evidently, maybe
Yeah.
when your arms, but, yeah.
But, well, also keep in mind there are some, when you have an independent dwelling unit, there's also other things you need to be providing, bathroom space,
Right.
a kitchen of some sort to a certain level, a sleeping area of a certain size. So there is, that's built into the building code in terms of all the overall square footage you're gonna end up with.
I will change it to say we've raised our maximum accessory dwelling unit size from 800 square feet to 1,000 square feet. We were just trying to reflect what the bill had said, but it does read difficult. So essentially, we're just raising the maximum size. Also, we needed to ensure that our development or design standards for accessory dwelling units weren't more restrictive than the principal home. Our current code limits the design of an accessory dwelling unit to maintain the design of the principal home. Meaning if someone wanted to propose an accessory dwelling unit on their lot, it would have to have a similar look to the existing residence on the property. We can no longer require that, so we're removing that requirement, and there's more flexibility in accessory dwelling unit looks, types, design. And then also, we must allow a conversion of an existing building to an accessory dwelling unit, even if it's non-conforming. If someone, so for example, someone has a property and they have a garage and it was built in 1950 prior to our setback requirements that now say an accessory structure has to be 20 feet from the rear yard setback. That structure was built when either there was no development code or the setback was less. Now, we can allow a property owner, an applicant to come in and convert that structure even though that it doesn't meet the current standards for that site. But that's if it's existing. Also, the structure may not be expanded beyond its existing footprint. So no additions. We also reviewed our impact fees. When someone comes in to build a residential unit, we collect an impact fee. We needed to ensure that those were not greater than 50% of a single-family residence, and our current fee resolution did reflect this. All right, before we move on to co-living, I just want to make sure we're okay. We don't have any questions. Beautiful. All right, so part of our code update, we have proposed co-living housing. This is a new housing type. Well, the name is new. Co-living housing are sleeping units that are independently rented and provide living and sleeping space, but the residents share kitchen facilities with the other units in the building. This is basically, you have your own private living area, bedroom space, sometimes a mini kitchenette in the unit, but overall, different rooms share a kitchen. Sometimes they have shared bathrooms. We amended the definition for co-living to replace boarding houses or rooming houses. Previously, it wasn't allowed use, it just had different language. We proposed to create the definition of co-living to match the bill. These housing types are allowed in the medium density residential, high density residential, mixed use, and general commercial zone districts. And for the purpose of density, one sleeping unit or one bedroom is counted, towards a quarter of a dwelling unit, or 4 sleeping units would equate to 1 dwelling unit. Yeah.
What's the difference between this and cottage housing?
Cottage housing are individual units. Cottage housing is just a, smaller residences, smaller structures. They don't have shared kitchens and bathrooms unless they have a community space that's included with the proposal. These are literal bedrooms and like smaller living areas that are privately owned with like a locked door, but then there would be a shared kitchen facility, almost like a dorm. So if you think about dorm housing, that's what this proposal is. With the co-living, the city may not require standards that are more restrictive than those that are required for other types of residential uses in the same zone. So this is like the multifamily zone. Exclude co-living from participating in affordable housing incentives. And we may not require more than a quarter or 0.25 off-street parking spaces per sleeping unit. So 4 sleeping units, we would require 1 parking space. Yes, this is a requirement though, so we,
What happens in the legislature? It's very specific language into CWs.
Can we exceed that? No, we can't.
Pushing the bicycle thing, right?
well,
Mhm.
it's
We
just-
can't require
we can't
more,
require it.
but people could offer more.
A developer could come in and propose more, if we can't require. So some other housing-related items and items that are required with the update. There were some parking update requirements. The city may not require off-street parking as a condition of a permitting a residential project if compliance with tree retention would otherwise make a proposed residential development or redevelopment infeasible. So here we have a balance of trees and parking. So what this is saying is we are prioritizing trees over parking. Parking spaces that consist of grass block pavers may count towards minimum parking requirements. This is just saying different paving types may be allowed to count as parking, whereas our previous code might have required asphalt, cement, stuff like this. So this gives more flexibility in the parking material type. Existing non-conforming lots are not required to be modified or resized except for compliance with ADA. So with infill development, redevelopment, additions, expansions, as long as the existing parking does not need to be modified or brought up to current code unless it's to meet ADA standards.
For the, kind of the second bullet there with the pervious surface, the block
Mm.
pavers, are there any allowable, not restrictions necessarily, but how is, you know, the runoff gets down into those pervious surfaces dealt with?
Oh,
It has to be an engineered system that's evaluated.
Drains to somewhere?
There has to be,
They get
it can
treated
go
or-
through an impervious surface, but there has to be some mechanism either for collection or infiltration over time as demonstrated.
mhm,
So there's an engineering.
yeah.
Yeah. Drain off to, you know, a creek.
No, it doesn't put into a big pipe into your backyard. That's a different section of the code.
Yeah, that's pervious, yeah, pervious surfaces. In my years of planning, I've never had someone propose that. I think it is more expensive. And it's like,
You do have some recent developments that have done that.
oh, that's great, but that might be because of stormwater requirements.
Well, it's because of cost, because stormwater facilities take space.
Yeah, so yeah, so,
They can use that.
So you can use your drive lanes and parking areas for stormwater rather than have a pond that
mhm.
is just for stormwater.
Is this the last bullet there? Did you? What is the last bullet?
Is that last one me?
Yeah. New
I
middle
think it
housing.
got cut off.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll fix that.
yeah, apologies for that.
Well, I'm
The
very much-
bottom bullet.
New middle housing and co-housing uses.
Yeah, I think it's just to indicate that, as for middle housing, we've added another line saying for requirements. Same thing with co-housing uses, that's where the quarter per.
Kind of back on the, quarter parking spot per sleeping unit.
Mm-hmm.
And if the developer, chooses to buy more parking, okay, they're not allowed to use city street part of their calculation. Or, and then if they are, what kind of management of that when their streets are maybe narrow or, other kinds of things that would obstruct traffic?
Currently, we do not allow, private development to have required on-street parking on the street. But, for example, if they do 4 units of co-living and they provide 1 space on, and then they said, we'll probably use the space in front.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing to prevent that, but, I mean,
Yep.
but they can't, can they count that?
No, unless, if there's a,
And,
unless it's a private road or a private lane within the development.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, but so if people do start using that as parking, and there's up to then not sufficient room, or, you know,
And then-
interferes with, say, trash pickup or mail
Yep.
delivery or fire trucks or
And,
one thing
and
or
at that
another.
point, the city actually becomes actively involved in parking management,
Okay,
which we have not done.
okay, so there's other ways to address
Well,
that.
requirements
Okay,
for
I see.
permits if you are, you know, go to Seattle.
Yeah.
Review all their,
Right, right.
that- so there's a range of potential things that can
So we're
occur.
not just kind of like, you know, shoving these cars around.
Our intent, is not to do that, and to politely let people know that one size does not fit all for
Right.
parking requirements. That in some cases where there is sufficient on-street parking, that might be a good option. If there's alternatives to a car, that might be an option. We have a lot of situations where we don't have adequate right-of-way. Capitol Boulevard, everything's turned over to the traffic.
Anderson Bridge.
So there isn't on-street parking, or there's geographical. So we try to make that argument.
All right, some other parking-related topics. Housing for seniors and people with disabilities, and housing to very or extremely low-income households and market-rate family housing. We updated our figure, it's a table in our zoning and land use chapter, and updated the requirements for residential uses and add reduced parking for development within 1/2 mile of a transit stop and or if the path is paved, as long as the path is paved, sorry. Got a little tongue-tied. And then we reduced the residential parking stall. We cannot require them to exceed 8 by 20. Previous code required 9 by 20. And then we must allow tandem parking spaces to count towards required parking. And I wanted to add a diagram of what tandem parking is. It's where 2 cars share a space here instead of being side by side. They are tandem like that. So yeah, some parking updates for residential uses.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
I'm assuming though, it's still the second car is not allowed to be on the sidewalk.
Yes, you're correct. It has to be within the site.
The ending of where that tandem is possible.
Yeah. The issue, of course, is when we're restricted by the 9 by 18 dimension, and somebody has a vehicle that's longer than 18, then it becomes an enforcement issue. So we can set the parking dimension, but whether or not somebody actually can fit in that spot.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now we're going to talk and discuss religious-sponsored housing density bonus. There are two religious-sponsored housing topics. This one is a density bonus. We've added an increased density bonus for affordable housing development on property that's owned or controlled by a religious organization. The caveat is the housing must be affordable for households earning less than 80% of the area median income, and it must remain affordable for at least 50 years. We updated our table in Tumwater Municipal Code, Chapter 18, and that is our permanently affordable housing incentives. There are other permanently affordable housing incentives, and so what we did is we added a density bonus for the religious-sponsored housing within that section of code. And then also, we made amendments to Title 18 for religious-sponsored homeless housing. This addresses homeless encampments to include the requirements of House Bill 1754, and we added a definition for homeless encampment. A homeless encampment is an accommodation for religious exercise by a host agency and sponsoring agency that may include temporary uses limited to an outdoor encampment, an indoor overnight shelter, a tiny house village, or a vehicle resident safe parking. We have some more topics on this on the next slide, so I'm going to go to the next slide real quick. As part of this bill, we updated our criteria for homeless housing and temporary shelters to include regular garbage disposal requirements, site parking requirements, indoor overnight shelter requirements, fire and safety requirements, and more. And we included tiny home villages under the temporary overnight shelters. But this was really we already allowed this use in our code, but we had to add more language about required safety, lighting, and other things, and consideration for neighboring properties.
It's not the wording here, but it is the wording in the ordinance itself. It talks about whether the temporary shelter or item has to be, what's the word in there, may require rules and regulations. Now, is this may as opposed to shall? Meaning they may do it? I mean, 'cause, the word may can be very quickly misinterpreted by a lawyer. You're just looking at something other than the word may. I differentiate may from shall. An attorney may not choose to do that.
So,
Not these worded here, it's worded in the actual.
No, I'll look for that.
And the idea is that if you're running a temporary shelter, you may choose to have regulation. You may choose not to have regulation. Not that you shall have or you shall not have. And that's differentiation. There are both in our community. Some people say you can have a dog. Some people say you may not have a dog. So they should have that latitude.
yeah,
Do you want them to have the latitude of May? And
Yeah, but I use a dog because that's nicer than drugs. But the question of whether someone is an addict or not, some areas it's not questioned, in other areas it's typically questioned. Question of whether someone is a pedophile, you really don't know about it. It's questioned in some areas, and other questions.
There are also some restrictions on what we can and can't do.
Yeah.
That's what the may has to be, is to allow whichever organization, particularly religious organization, with running the shelter, to make their own rules. There are no rules.
Yeah, thanks for the feedback. We'll take a look at that bill and then make sure the code reflects what's required of the bill.
I'm kind of concerned about that in the sense that I don't know if it's legal for the religious sponsoring agency to impose something on people they're housing
Actually, I
that
think,
is not illegal.
Most of the temporary shelters in area here have a written set of requirements.
Mm-hmm.
Each person
Mhm.
who's admitted into the shelter is required to sign.
Right.
a religious organization can establish more strict rules than
Okay.
ones that aren't, or ones that are receiving a
Publicly funded.
particular kind of funding.
Okay. As long as
There's a lot of other things that come into play about the
Right.
rules of.
Right.
So, for example, things that are receiving funding from the regional pots of money that
Right.
the regional housing council manages
Uh-huh.
aren't allowed to have those level of restrictions. But if you are getting funding from another source and you're providing a service, you can have restrictions related to drug use and all.
I guess I'm just kind of concerned that, I'm not saying anybody's doing this, but concerned that restrictions could apply that are somebody who's not doing anything illegal. I get the ones that are illegal, drug use, pedophilia, or whatever kind of thing,
Nothing
but
illegal about a dog.
nothing illegal
There's
about it.
only one place in Olympia you
Right.
can bring a dog.
Or, but if you come in and, okay, wrong skin color, or you're gay, or whatever. can
That's
you do
a,
that?
that's a different, that's a different matter. There are federally and state protected classes.
Okay.
That would be addressed by, in fact,
They're not allowed to do that.
PMC 570 outlines the long list of things that are protected classes that Tumwater said, these are classes that you cannot.
So you're open for
Yeah.
providing
Dogs,
shelter, you have to allow.
Dog owners aren't on that list.
Yeah, okay,
So-
because they.
Not protected class.
Yeah, but other things they can't.
So that's where that's.
And to put into perspective, this is the city development regulations in our code, and it's what the city can require versus what's required by state, required by funding sources, required, there's different requirements, but it's just what is in our purview to require in Title 18. So we'll review the bill and then make sure the language, addresses what's required of the bill for the city jurisdictions.
I kind of, while we're on this topic, I've mentioned before about the curiosity of the word religious. And so what I'm trying to make sure is that if somebody, some entity, a host agency or sponsoring agency comes along that happens not to be affiliated with a religious do-gooder, would this similar ordinance apply? Would this ordinance apply to
No.
somebody coming along wanting to provide housing?
Because, number one, it's explicitly for religious organizations. And the religious organization definition, which is in 1804-170,
Yeah.
is
It's pretty broad.
derived in part from the state legislation that put this into place.
Yeah.
So, it's fairly broadly written, but it means a federally protected practice of recognized religious assembly, school, or institution that owns or controls real property and includes as but are not limited to churches, mosques, synagogues, temples, non-denominational ministries, interdenominational and ecumenical organizations, mission organizations, faith-based social agencies, and other entities whose principal purpose is the study, practice, and advancement of religion.
Still tied to religion, though.
It is explicitly tied to religion,
So,
but
somebody just wanted to help provide housing.
then there is an alternative path.
Sorry, I was gonna say, we still have the housing density, the permanently affordable housing, so if someone wanted to provide affordable housing, they would still get the density bonuses. that were in the previous topic as far as religious-sponsored housing.
Yeah.
We do have incentives for affordable housing. And there are things that, you know, they could get reduced fees, you know, more density, more units that could be allowed. I don't know, Brett, if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing that, well, the primary place where religious organizations differ from others is for homeless encampments. Meaning that if they're providing temporary shelter within a certain time, we have a very explicit section of the code that already limits it to exercise of religious activity, which again came from a previous set of state regulations. And what we're essentially doing is updating that
Right.
to reflect the current requirements that the state has now passed for that.
Is there a difference in, say, the tax burden of the entity that owns the property between the religious and somebody else under? Who do they pay it similar?
Can't speak to that.
Is one advantaged over another for providing housing?
And I can't speak to the tax, because I don't know.
Some other way? Okay. That area makes sense.
Acknowledge, but
Yeah. Okay.
at the same time, our obligation is to meet what the state requires.
All right. Another topic for discussion, design review requirements. Residential projects are reviewed to ensure they meet quality standards and are compatible with surrounding developments. Design reviews enhance the pedestrian features and improve compatibility. This includes overall design, building materials, landscaping, lighting, safety, and access. Citywide design guidelines have been updated to include middle housing to ensure they are not more restrictive than a single-family detached residence. And for perspective, I wanted to add a little diagram that we have in our mixed-use general commercial chapter, and it's just showing examples of design review as far as building setbacks, pedestrian walk space, the overhangs, zero lot lines, you know, tree requirements and tree placement. So this is an example of design review. When someone comes in for a proposal, there's a land use review and then there's a design review component. Also, this bill requires that we do both reviews concurrently. So updates to some of the chapters of the design review. Chapter 2, which is the commercial mixed use and multifamily. We did some clarifications, and we clarified that Chapter 2 does apply to multifamily residential development, and we removed townhouse development, and we added townhouses to Chapter 6. Chapter 5 is our cottage housing. The current version of Chapter 5, we deleted that, and it replaced it with middle housing, single-family detached dwellings, and accessory dwelling units. So what this means is we removed some chapters and we updated to have townhouse development and cottage housing included with the single-family, middle housing, and accessory dwelling unit chapter. So they're all reviewed. They're not more, one type of housing is not more restrictive than the other, and it's all in one. And then Chapter 6, that was a previous single-family chapter. We deleted it, and now it is definitions. So there was a table, I believe, in the staff report that showed what chapters were what and what they got changed to, but I really just wanted to highlight the changes to these specific chapters and the fact that we included most residential, middle housing, single-family housing, and accessory dwelling units into one chapter.
When you're taking a look at the citywide design guidelines, when you look at the new chapter 5, which is the middle housing single family, that's pretty much completely new, and it's not in strike through. But so you assume it's all in language.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned that there were 6 of 9 middle housing types, and Are the other housing types covered with this, duplex, triplex, quadplex, dock flats? Are they part of the new
Yeah,
development
so
guidelines too?
what we've defined middle housing in 1804, our definition section, as those 6 housing types.
Okay,
So duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhomes, cottage housing, and stack flats. We're required to have 6 of the 9, and those are the 6 that we decided would be most appropriate. So and then as to make it easier to sort of, when we're talking about middle housing requirements, we also define middle housing in that, so we can refer to it when we're talking about parking, when we're talking about landscaping, and so forth.
Were there any changes made to the landscaping and tree?
The only changes we made to the landscaping section were to remove requirements where we had combined the 2 single-family zone districts together. So for example, when we had single-family low and single-family medium, those are now low-density residential. So we made changes to reflect that in landscape code. We have not made any changes yet for the urban forestry amendments, so no changes to 1608 for tree preservation, and no changes yet to street tree requirements in 1224. Those are coming.
I'm obviously not familiar with that. Actually, talk about the trees that are appropriate for planting on, next to a sidewalk and. I guess.
Terry, Terry is reliving some memories of our discussion from 2 years ago. We get into exquisite detail of land, in the landscaping chapter says, here's what a typical, if you have a type 2 landscaping, it involves this level of tree, this level of shrubbery, that kind of thing.
Trees with.
Density.
Trees with roots that go down and not.
Well, that's where we get in, we have other things that we try to address.
Those 2 arborists have the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, the sidewalks show the evidence.
We have walked the sidewalks enough ourselves to know that we have to address that issue.
And
So
2 inches of soil does not make a lawn.
that is correct.
And
I would like to see that.
We quite agree.
And of the 3 pieces of the urban forestry ordinance going forward, one whole section is street trees that identifies. Well, we'll be working through that together next year, early.
Yeah.
Right.
Or,
The council that we have now has decided that the whole list is bad, that's in the current.
Oh, dear.
yeah,
If you go inside
it is
now
a-
and
no,
look at the
it-
appendix, don't pick any of those trees.
yeah, so just, we're giving a little hint of the excitement to come next year.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I know you're thinking that once you're done with this, that's it, but just stay tuned.
Oh, you will be immersed.
These, move the sidewalk no more than 0.4 centimeters. These move it more than.
I'm not ones that don't move it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, tonight, the update, the 2025 Development Code update is primarily to address the middle housing and housing crisis, and that's why the legislature passed House Bill 5558, is to expedite these code changes, to match the housing element so that we could, hopefully start building more housing and, progress that a little further along. So now we'll talk about the adoption process for ordinance O 2025-011. We will have a work session November 10th. And yep, the same day as the public hearing on the comprehensive plan update. And then November 25th, 2025, is when we plan to have the hearing on the development code update. And December 9th, we will have a joint work session with City Council on both the comprehensive plan update and the development code update. And then this is slated for City Council consideration in late January. I also wanted to remind the commission, this is only one part of development code updates. we will be presenting, in the first half of 2026, the 2026 Development Code updates. So there will be more topics. That was included in the staff report, item 6 here. So that's when we'll start talking about the unit lot subdivisions, which is where we will basically be subdividing accessory dwelling units. Then we'll have the SEPA categorical exemptions, manufactured housing. There will be topics for critical areas regulations, natural resource lands, updating our short plat requirements for condominiums. So that's just a little bit of a preview of what's to come. So there will be more development code updates, which is why I also wanted feedback on what would be the best way to present this type of information going forward, because this is just 1 out of 2. So.
Erica, you mentioned at the top of this item that the council needs to adopt both comprehensive and the development code revisions at the same time.
These particular things are tied together because of the way the state law is written.
Yes. So I'm wondering, though, we're not precluded if something comes along, you know, from further revision. Is that the case?
Meaning if the legislature comes back with even
No,
more changes?
if within the city, we realize, you know, there's some changes.
We always have the ability
Right.
to do housekeeping and tweaks as needed if 237 pages aren't accurate,
Yeah.
kind of.
So development codes can be updated many times during a year. The comp plan can only be amended once.
Right.
We don't try to amend the code more.
But I'm
Yeah,
sure.
it's a long process, so.
Yeah.
But if there's an egregious issue that we have to address, that's
Challenge, but, you know, something were to come up. And the council is slated to, or it needs to adopt these by the end of the year, or
Yeah,
is
so-
January 20th good enough?
Well, our
Are we on
our
standby?
issue is
Do we
obviously,
need to
you've
run over there right now?
seen the amount of work that we've been
Yeah.
doing to try to get to this point.
Right.
We're kind of held back, towards the end of the year because we're gonna miss some meetings because of holidays.
Yeah.
There has been some chatter about potentially the council meeting on the 18th of December if needed.
Mm-hmm.
So if we could set it up for them to approve everything on the 18th, that would be, council needs to make that decision. They were going to. It's also complicated because we have an election year, and the first meeting in January is really the welcome to the city for the new council members. And so they are not going to be ready, they're probably not going to be ready on the 20th, but they're definitely not going to be ready on the 6th.
Do we want to talk about the model code?
No.
Yeah.
I'll mention that. So the backstop issue, obviously, from our perspective, is we want to get this done sooner than later. On the development code, if we don't adopt these changes by the end of the year, there is a state model code that supersedes our existing code until we pass this ordinance.
So there will be this little interim period.
20 days.
Technically, we will be. under this
Technically, if
model.
somebody submits an application for middle housing type and it works with the model ordinance, then we will review it and approve it based on those particular sets of regulations.
They would be vested to that? They couldn't
They would
choose?
be vested.
Yeah.
No, you don't change once you're
Once you're
in, for
in,
good or for bad.
Unless the clock stops for some other reason.
No,
No.
vesting is based on the date you submit an application. And so that's your lock-in. And then you have 28 days for us to determine to be complete. But once we say it's complete, that very first day you submit it is the date that the codes are, the relevant codes in place at that time govern your.
All right, everybody's.
No.
No.
If you are anywhere else in the country almost, they don't have that rule.
Correct.
That you can submit an application and then change the rules as much as you want,
Mhm.
and they'd have to make the changes. Washington is unique in the sense that there's that level of surety. But if you submit by complete application by a particular time, those are the rules you're reviewed under.
Makes sense. It does.
From the cost standpoint and a whole bunch of reasons, it
Clarity.
makes sense.
Between what we're proposing and the model.
Not really.
Okay.
It's just that the model ordinance is, in my mind, poorly written and
Confusing
very
and
confusing and-
ambiguous and subject to litigation.
well, it's a state law, so it's not like if somebody challenges it, they'll be probably taking it to Congress. So.
Mhm.
All right.
They didn't feel like it's important enough to come to this meeting, they probably haven't read what the model was.
Okay, that's what you had.
Yep, thank you for your time this evening. As always, feel free to provide comments, suggestions, and maybe if you review the ordinance and have more questions, comments, concerns, let us know. We will have a work session on the 10th of November. I will not be here, but our wonderful staff will be presenting. So thank you so much.
I will just reiterate that our next meeting is a Monday. But I would appreciate every reminder, ding, 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 it's Monday, not Tuesday. So,
We'll do our best.
okay, and then we resume back to Tuesday. Anybody have anything else you'd like to bring up? All right, seeing as how we've concluded our business for this evening, we're adjourned.
So I'm still disappointed.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
Good night.
Thank you, Brandon.